All right, thank you for tuning in to this video for Pocket Coach Academy. I've got a guest here today we're going to discuss and talk about the top 5 tips, tricks, advice, what to watch for, however you want to call it, for new coaches. So our best advice or tips that we can give new coaches starting out in their first or second, or if they still feel like they're a new novice coach in their third or fourth, fifth year. I know sometimes I still struggle with it, and I've been doing it for 10 years. But so our guest today is Rory McKenzie. And if you don't know who that is, then you probably are a new coach because he is all over Texas. You might see him on the national stage at NSDA announcing international extemp. He did lessons at CapCon, student leader conferences. He works multiple camps around the state. Baylor, TSDC over at UT Tyler. Is there any more that I'm missing?
No, those are the only
That's
camps.
all you did this year?
That's all I. Well,
Yeah,
that's it. I'm
I
actually
know.
leaving for Portland in the morning for the National Federation of High Schools topic selection for
Oh,
CX.
that's right. That's right.
So heading
So,
there to finish out.
so obviously, I say that just to give him a little credibility, so that that this guy has not only been around long enough, but he is involved in every corner and aspect of speech and debate, all the way from UIL to working, at the local level to the national level. So, Rory, let's get right into it. We're gonna try and keep this video short. When we posted on Facebook, and I was reaching out to try and really understand. I have my own personal, viewpoint of what new coaches struggle with from my experience, but I really reached out, and we kind of got, surprisingly, honestly, the number one thing that was listed. We had over 100 comments and people engaged. You know, 70, 80 people engaged in over 100 comments, and the number one thing that was listed was recruiting. And so, let's start and jump off. Like, if for a new coach trying to get a program off, which I guess it makes sense, like, you need people, you need students. So
Gotta get them.
what how would you guide, or what advice would you give to new coaches as it pertains to building a team with just recruiting students?
Yeah. So I think that first, obviously, the sooner that you can have a class at your school to teach at during the day, the better. A lot of school districts won't be able to provide that until there's enough interest. So that's probably like something to keep in mind, is to try to like build it there. But if you're starting with just an after school type thing, or maybe you do only have like one class and you're wanting to build it, I do think you've got to get some other people involved. You've got to get become real close with your high school counselor. You need to be in conversations with maybe like the English department, maybe like your AP or pre-AP or honors level English teachers, just for reaching out to find certain kids. If you, depending on what you already teach at the school, you might have an in with some of them. But if you don't, then those types of connections are great. I think you also need to be involved at your lower campus as well. Starting out, it's great to have a couple of upperclassmen, but obviously for long-term success, you're wanting to build and get young kids, and young kids are probably a little bit more willing to learn along with you. So I can't like undervalue, I guess, the need to talk with your junior high. Maybe there's a GT program or some class where like a good group of kids is already in, and seeing if you can go talk to them, seeing if you can set up a time to go meet with them. Maybe there's tabling that your school does at like eighth grade events or parent nights, or uh, anything like that that your district might offer. Being a part of that is a great tool. The NSDA has some research that's available for coaches, that they have kind of compiled for like touting the importance of a speech and debate program. They're doing a lot of work right now to really engage their alumni base. So a lot of very notable individuals are kind of giving their speech and debate origin stories. That's sometimes pretty helpful for recruiting new kids, especially if they relate to who they're seeing. I'm reminded of during Ketanji Brown Jackson's confirmation hearing, she specifically spoke about her speech and debate experience in high school and why that was so important and how it helped her in so many ways, which I think is pretty just awesome now that she's sitting on the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
So those types of things are going to get you the students who are wanting to achieve, wanting to see that level. Of course, we want to know about scholarships. Kids want to, parents and kids want to know about scholarships. But that I think is the first thing that I would do. The second thing that I would do is after, with the help of these counselors or teachers or whoever, if you're wanting it to be really effective, we all know that like mass flyers and things like that are not the most personable. So I really recommend things like individualized emails. I started emailing our junior high UIL team, which doesn't really have affiliation with what I do at the high school. I don't know those students personally or anything, but I started reaching out to them after their meets, congratulating them, and so many of them have talked about, I remember getting this email from you when I was in 6th grade, 7th grade. And so just those types of personal connections are always going to be helpful. Um, Anytime that you can send like letters home to parents and give them like some physical mail, sometimes they'll throw it away, but other times it can be just a sign of like going the extra step.
Yeah.
Um, if you're a new coach, I would focus on the fact that you're learning with them and it's an opportunity. And I don't think you should ever feel like you have to have all the answers or know everything. I think a lot of students relate to the idea of learning right along with you. Speech and debate is interesting because unlike band or sports or dance or even like math and English, speech and debate, high school might be the first time that they've ever engaged or interacted with something like that. So they are brand new. So if you're finding yourself as a coach in that same boat, that's just a way that you relate with them. So I don't think you have to view it as a weakness. I think you can use that to your advantage. But I think those things would be really helpful to start out.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. And, I'll say, like you talked about it with your emails, right? Recruiting is that first step in building a relationship. There's really nothing else about it. And, if you're not focused on that long-term relationship and you're not selling or recruiting in that manner, then it's good. You're probably not gonna be as successful as you would be if you approached it from a relationship building standpoint and not just I need a body to fill this role standpoint. And so,
Yeah.
I
I think
really
kids
like,
just want something to belong to. Parents want to know that their kids are special. And I don't mean that sarcastically, but
yeah.
they enjoy hearing that and they
Well,
enjoy
every student's got some
giving that.
special talents. And
They
so
do.
sometimes speech and debate is where they can thrive in their special talents,
Yep.
and,
And those emails and letters, like starting off with, I was talking to some teachers in your grade or in your campus, if it's to a junior high, and they really recommended you as a great student. Like those types of just positive affirmations
yeah,
really go a long way.
yeah. I was one thing you said earlier that I really liked and that I'm a big believer in, especially starting a program, is like when and recruiting that you want to go ahead and bite the bullet in the year 1, year 2, and recruit those freshmen and those 8th graders and the maybe even sophomores. Not that it's saying that you can't if you got an all-star junior, senior that wants to sign up, but
Yeah.
really getting them early and touching them in junior high, getting that relationship built in junior high, then you get in their brain and you can fill that spot. Because one of the problems that I run into, and I think a lot of even, tenured coaches or new coaches run into is, speech and debate isn't in their plan,
Right.
coming up. They're a basketball or they played baseball or they did dance or they did cheer, or, like there's all those youth activities that get them kind of in tracks, and speech and debate isn't one of those tracks. And so you really kind of have to, the earlier you can get them, at least thinking about, or, possibly in their plan, then you got a better chance of actually getting commitment and a program built. with kids that will stay for 4 years and, want
Absolutely.
to develop. And so that was always kind of my thought and approach, is like, I need to get these kids to look at this as a route for them. When they play bad sports, they think about playing all 4 years. Like, there's never a thought of them going, oh, I might do this my freshman year, sophomore year. I mean, maybe some
Totally.
kids do, but generally they want to be on varsity. They want to become um all 4 year starter, and things like those are kind of the visualizations they have. And so try and
Yeah.
get that, implanting those visualizations into them in junior high, of like, oh, I might could do this all 4 years and be successful, or be a state champion, or be a, you know, national competitor or qualifier, or, national champion, if you will. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's my thought, or a little added value, but that's good. Um, so hopefully that helps in your recruiting. I definitely would recommend using those NSDA resources. Parents
Yes.
eat that stuff up. They love to hear about the college admissions and the scholarships, and, I mean, money talks. And when you really look at what speech and debate does for college admissions and scholarships and just academic excellence, like, it's just the data's there. It all supports participation in speech and debate, and use that to
Yes.
your advantage.
100%.
So the second thing that everyone, or kind of number two in the hotbed of new coach stress, if you will, was resources. And and you can attest, when you know me from when I was a new coach,
Yeah.
and I pestered you more than you and Christy Hodgkiss were. I followed you around like a little puppy dog, because there's just not necessarily a great place to get everything you need, or all the answers to your questions as you're a new coach. So what are some
Totally.
resources, the best we can? And that's what, honestly, the why I started Pocket Coach Academy was because, and I remember talking, I hope you remember this conversation we had, of like, why isn't there a book? Like, why can't I just
Yeah.
get the answers? Why do I have to chase people down in a tab room or in the judge's hospitality and be like, hey, so, okay, what do you think about this? It's
Yep.
like a secret club. And so,
It is. It is. Unfortunately, like, coaching is difficult. Like, it's a challenge, and even I feel like if those resources exist, I feel like sometimes they're out of date after just a
yeah.
couple of years or something. The first resource that I think you need to really look into is your state organization. In Texas, UIL has great resources. TFA is getting some additional resources, but start there. That's probably where, like, if your school is giving you some support or help, that's probably what your school wants more than anything else, is those things. So familiarizing yourself with the calendar, kind of knowing, or at least knowing to look for if there are deadlines associated with certain events in Texas. UIL has a Congress deadline that comes up pretty early September. So just kind of being on the lookout for those types of things. That would be the first place. I really can't recommend the NSDA resource package enough. Sorry, that was kind of a weird sentence, but can't recommend it enough. It is a great resource package in terms of giving you access to examples of rounds, which is so crucial, especially if you're coming to this activity not having participated at the high school level, or at any other level before. No, don't get me wrong. There are some great coaches who have done just that, who were never involved in this as a student or a competitor, but came to coaching, and they're some of the best coaches ever. My coach was like that in high school. Christy Hodgkiss was like that. I mean, there are just some amazing coaches who fit that bill. So don't let that deter you. But getting to see kind of what the final product should look like is always a good thing, and the resource package does great there. It also has things like lesson plans and sort of like they call it like teacher in a box.
Yeah.
So a sort of like somewhat step by step. It's not going to fit with every teacher's classes, or if you're only doing it after school, you'll have to be a little more choosy. But some great resources, especially if you're going to have to rely on kids doing some self learning as well. Those are great. But the third resource that I think you've got to find for yourself is a mentor. There's got to be a person. You've got to have the person who you can call quickly and ask a question that may seem simple to other people, but to you, it's the thing that's bogging you down. I can tell you from fielding those calls from people, usually that is edifying for me to help or assist,
Yeah.
especially even if it's something that's super, super quick, something that maybe a new coach might be stressing about, but a veteran coach maybe doesn't stress about it or something, or knows it really quickly. I think it's a great resource. Honestly, treat your mentor like Google.
Okay,
And
good. I don't
really,
feel guilty about firing
no,
techs
no,
off
no,
there.
no.
I still
It's a
do.
good. It really is a good way to like grow a relationship, and it's also honestly, it's the help that you need. Like it's you need someone who you feel like you can shoot off a quick text to or an email, and get that. I know that the National Debate Coaches Association has a mentorship program, that
I did
is,
not know that.
has varying levels of success, but can be a start. But if you don't know where to start, do recommend someone local to your area, just because that's a friendly face that you'll see at tournaments, and just something that'll just decrease some anxiety there. But if nothing else, it's just someone who's in a similar situation, even if they're across the state. Texas is big, y'all. So even if it's across the state, that's great. But there are plenty of people. You can start with the UIL. Jana Riggins is our state director, and I know that she would help connect new coaches to a mentor if you need that additional help. And I think you could certainly reach out to Cody here, or myself. I mean, really, I think there are so many people who are willing to invest in the activity and make those connections for people who need it. But you can't undersell that. You've got to have help, um, someone who can at times hold your hand if you need it, someone who can just again quickly provide you some answers that'll decrease your stress and give you somewhere to go.
When and you know what I think about for me, obviously like shooting a little text, hey, where did I find this? I can't find that. Sometimes you just get like you run out of mental capacity. It's not that you
Yep.
couldn't find the answer or you don't have the time. It's just sometimes you just need to look at a friend and be like, hey, what is this again? Like, what do I do here? Or can you remind me? But I remember the main thing I remember, and why I would say that their third one is the most important, is just when the stress hits and you have drama on your team or parent issues or admin issues, or like you have something bad happen, or you're just you're feeling overwhelmed and burnout, and it's just you get into a bad place. A lot of times the best things that my conversations with you, Rory, or Christy, all the time, I remember calling, so calling you or talking to you at a tournament when something happens, and it just gives you that foundation to not feel so overwhelmed in those moments, because it
Yep.
is really easy to feel like you're on an island and you're coaching this team, and the admin doesn't really understand what you're doing, and the other teachers just know that their kids are missing school, and your spouse has no clue what you're talking about at the house. And so I just remember being able to call Christy or call you and be like, okay, I had a student do this and I'm about to lose my mind on them. They like what I don't know how to handle it, or this is what I'm doing. And even if it was just listening, it was
Yep.
someone that you knew understood the problems that you were facing,
Yeah.
that like, because it's very unique like this. And that's why I think that we struggle as a community to kind of build from brand new to tenured. And I mean, I'm not saying it's not unique or that it's unique to our profession by itself, but one of the things is that I think that a lot of coaches feel very on an island and isolated, because there's not someone else on campus day to day that knows what you're going through and what you're doing, and
Totally.
your challenge.
Well, and I think for so many new coaches, sometimes what I feel like I've heard from people is I don't even know what to ask. I don't even know what I need. What I don't even know what to do. So, but yeah, setting up like a Zoom call, I've done that with several new coaches, and just sort of talking through, figuring out goals for the year, kind of like mapping it from the end point back to the beginning, and just helping make like checklists and to do lists. And if nothing else, I think that will help you then learn what questions you need to ask. Because I do agree, especially if you're someone who your school just said, "Hey, you're doing this," or if it's a last minute type thing, it can get overwhelming. And so have someone with you. Don't be an island for sure.
So I want to make sure we're getting a little short on time here, but I just want to make sure that we get to the third biggest area, at least cover the top three. We may have tried to get to five, but we're speech coaches, we're long winded.
Yeah.
So the third one, which is not going to be a surprise to anybody, is fundraising, right? And this is really not a new coach challenge. This is every coach in the nation faces the challenge of fundraising. And I mean, and unfortunately, that's one of the things we run into is that the have and the have nots, the money and being able to travel and get to harder and bigger and more competitive tournaments or attend, NSDA and do the thing can be a big differing aspect to a program's overall success. I mean,
Yeah.
you've got to get out there and compete. Luckily, online has kind of helped, alleviate that strife a little bit. But what would you say are your, top, two or three most successful fundraising tools that you use to make, your team which y'all do travel trips, y'all go, not every year, but you'll take the kids to Harvard or Berkeley, and then you'll go to
Mhm.
NSDA and TFA state, and
Yeah.
and there's not much that you could do that you don't do. I mean, I
Right.
guess you could travel out of state every weekend, but I don't know that
Wow. I don't
that
think my
any,
wife would go
I
for
don't know
that.
that too many teams have that funding. So what are the top three ways that you fund, your program, which I would say travels more than just about anybody in the state?
Sure. Well, first, I do think that hosting events at your school is a great place to do it. That is very difficult and to do as a newcomer or a first year, and it might feel overwhelming. A mentor really helps you with that, but it doesn't have to be huge. But starting off small, just to help get one, it makes your program more visible to your administration as well, even if it's small. A workshop type things, not tournaments, but like a workshop. But I mean, that's a great opportunity for things like concession, for entry fees if you're doing it that way. So I think that's a great one that's kind of built into our system. If you're limited by your school to only have a certain number of fundraisers per year, they may not even consider those to be fundraisers. So that's a good way to like get
Good point.
around that if you
Yeah.
have to. Um, Beyond that, I think that there are a lot of the typical fundraising things can work, especially if you want to view it as like each individual student fundraising for themselves or their portions. You can do simple goals like that and figure out something niche in your area, whether that's chocolate or something like that. But don't forget your event things. I would always say in general, like take it to the community. You can host like a debate in your community about something. There's a big thing in Texas right now about 4-day school weeks. I think it would be a great fundraiser to have a public debate about whether or not school should go to a 4-day school week or something like that.
Yeah.
And you can charge a small admission. Again, you could turn it into a spaghetti dinner or something like that and feed people. But to showcase your students, to get your community involved, that's going to help you get partnerships with things like local banks, law firms, those types of things that you can try to get some support from. And that's a great way. A lot of local businesses want to support the school and want to support the school's programs.
I want
Definitely
to add.
always. You
Oh,
go
I want
ahead.
to add something in right there that I'm a really big believer in, that when you host or when you have events and you have very specific things, those are so much easier to get sponsorship dollars for than just asking a business, "Hey, would you give us $500 for the season?" It's going to feel a little bit, you're going to get a lot more no's than if you go to your local bank and say, "Hey, would you sponsor the spaghetti dinner for our community event?" And now they're not necessarily, they're buying the food that costs to feed everyone, and it's decreasing the expenses so that you're profiting. Or maybe they sponsor hospitality and a local restaurant puts their signage up, and they get a little marketing under the guise of a charitable donation. And
Yep.
those all, I have a lot more success when I try and sell specific sponsorships for specific things, like
Correct.
providing the food, or being a sponsor for that event, and think, very specific moments, or sponsoring this student to this trip.
Correct.
I think you
Well,
get
and
a
I
lot
think
more
we need to
yeses.
become good brand ambassadors basically for our programs. And
Yeah.
Again, your football team probably does a good job of that because people believe in the brand. We can borrow from that and we can promote our brand as well. If you have a student who doesn't have the tournament attire, so many people in the community may be willing to sponsor that student or provide those types of resources.
Yeah.
And again, that can be difficult and again, overwhelming for a new coach, but those types of things are probably going to give you some greater return. You always need to check with your school about their policies about fundraising and seeking support from the community in that way financially. But I do think that that's a great way, and hopefully, you know, your school then can start to see what the need is for your program, and maybe after the second year, third year, maybe you can also get some additional support from your school, which
Yes.
is definitely invaluable. The last thing I would say about fundraising, real quick, is just that there are a lot of grants and um, programs out there that are willing to support. The NSCA has several grants available for new programs and new coaches. I would also tell you that if entry fees are a problem or judge fees are a problem for tournaments, reach out to those tournament hosts, tell them your story, tell them your situation, and the worst they can tell you is can't help you. But I think what you'll probably see is a lot of coaches who are willing to say, well, yeah, let me see what I can do. Let me comp a judge fee or, slash your entry fees a little bit.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of ways to try to get some help. And that is deep, I guess that's ex facto fundraising, or it has the same effect, I guess. But
Yeah. Well, I mean, cutting
definitely
off the
don't
bottom
forget.
line is the same as adding
Yeah.
to revenue. Yeah.
So don't forget that you can do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I think most tournaments are looking for more entries. There's very
Yep.
few tournaments that are full, especially post COVID. So I don't think that they're going to be turning you away if
Totally.
if you want to try and comp your entry fees. So yeah, I think that's great. And I think that we touch into it real quick. We got 2 minutes left. We kind of talked a little bit about administrative support, and
Yeah.
and this really kind of branches over. So that's why I was going to. And we talked about this in that new coaches webinar. And one thing that I said, and I'm curious of what your approach is, but what my approach with admin has always been what do you need from me so that I can get from you what I need. Like I've always asked, like when we talked about a class, I went to them and say, okay, how many kids do I need signed up to warrant a second debate class or a junior high class? Like what would I need to do so that you would feel comfortable giving me that? And so
Yeah.
it gives you a target, and then it's communicating in a way. The same thing like with fundraising, like how many kids on my program do I need so that I can get the fundraising that these other programs get, or so that I
Absolutely.
can have a budget, my own budget line, or whatever it is you're kind of trying to get from admin. Ask them, what do I need to do so that I can get that from you? And it kind of relieves the yes or no aspect, and it's more of a, makes them think about what is reasonable and fair for
Absolutely.
you and expectations.
Yeah, I would just say always be willing to accept no, but you've got to ask. You've got to get it. You've got to get the question out there. But also you've got to promote what your kids are doing. If you're a first year coach, especially in a first year program, you may not have what like typical markers of success. You've got to learn how to market your successes to your principals, to your superintendent. That might be a newsletter or just a simple email every so often with a hey, this is what we've been doing. It may be inviting them to come to your classroom as a guest judge or celebrity judge. Um, those things are great. Don't underestimate them. But when you're visible and when your kids are visible for what they're doing, more people are going to be willing to support you.
I agree 100%. So, Rory, thanks for coming on. Hopefully this helped you. If you took one thing from this video, go find a mentor.